And that's what also brings us to Palantir. So if you go to Palantir and their website, I mean, when I first really started getting into it about a year ago, there is just so many different verticals that they're attacking: energy, blockchains, cybersecurity, fraud for financial. Like, there's so many different industries, and the trillion-dollar industries, they don't need to get all of it. They need to get a small slice of it to really deliver shareholder value. And if you can get a small slice of many different industries, there's a real potential for them to be a market leader. So is that ultimately why you're excited for them? You think they kind of have the best tech in this space that could allow them to become a theoretical monopoly in multiple industries, at least for the time being?
Sure. So I'm gonna soften the blow a bit on that. I think that there never has to be one winner. I think there can be a couple of winners who have differentiated value and will oftentimes work together, a layer on top of each other. My experience working, especially with the biggest companies out there, is there is standardization, and then there's also some other players for key areas. I think what's exciting about the way Palantir is approaching this is they've been very thoughtful about how they want to go to market here. They wanted to be the dominant player in the military and government sector, right? We know that. This is like the thing that actually stands out to me the most about Palantir that gets me excited is Apollo. I think a lot of people get excited about the visualization layers and the operational layers and how they're going to bring it to commercial and military, et cetera. But the biggest challenge in 2022 is almost all enterprises out there, government, private sector, whatever, they have disparate data that lives on legacy old systems. They've got it on brand new systems like AWS, Azure, et cetera, and they need it to all basically be brought together in one place. So if you think about the way architecture works in and around analytics and AI, right? We've got your company's different data sources, right? Then we need a connectivity layer, then we need an operational layer, then we need to sort of like deploy those things out. Every company's got that data layer. You can then treat Apollo as a standalone singular company almost that acts as that connectivity layer. And that's the piece for me that is the absolute biggest challenge, hands down, in the commercial space. And if you're solving for that, that's where I start to get pumped up, because the ability to connect to public and private clouds, gov-level clouds, heavily governed spaces, as well as Excel sheets and data warehouses that live on a computer. Right. That layer gives you the ability to then really scale at speed on, Foundry as that next level for enterprise, for example. So when I think about this, and I approach it with customers, this is just my perspective. I don't work for them. To me, it's like, let's really embrace all of your data, no matter where it lives. And then, what executives oftentimes say is, well, it's bad data. In 20 years, I'm yet to ever see good data. I'd love to know what it looks like, because it doesn't exist. Because every day, some data becomes stale or outdated, or someone enters a name wrong, or a revenue number wrong, right, or there's a sensor that goes bad. So there's always bad data. But the question is, how fast can we prepare that data and look and find those anomalies that live within it? And by having a strong AI tool to recognize in workflow, in the flow of what it's doing, and flag, here's a problem, there's a problem, this doesn't fit. What we can then start to think about is performing AI at a data level. And we haven't really gotten to this yet, but this is the cool stuff that absolutely no one talks about because they don't see it, right? At the data level, when we're connecting and we're merging and we're joining these things, it's a big process. It doesn't have to be hard, but it is a big process. What we're starting to see a lot of companies do that's really cool is they're applying AI machine learning, excuse me, at the data flow level. So things like real-time sentiment analysis of survey comments as they come in, and metricing those against other KPIs. We're looking at the ability to time series forecasting or missing values because something came over from accounting or finance or an ERP system, which is like a transactional system. Right. And it doesn't have all the values in it, right? So we can start to predict and prescribe what those values should be to help us still get to that endpoint. And that ability to start to apply AI at a data level, at an operational level, at an output level, this is where that intelligent blanket starts to come in, and all points are operating off of the same vision of the same customer, right? Because at the end of the day, what we're really working towards is this complete 360 of our customer, whether it's the government or a plane or a net new sale for your company, right? Like, we want that 360 to understand everything we can know about that customer, from how they buy to how they consume to how they get retained. And that's what this whole piece of it really comes down to for me, is that platform approach.
And sort of your argument here for being bullish on Palantir is that they have what seemingly is a technology that other companies don't have because of their patents, because of their like, why do they have this and Google and the other guys?
Yeah, great question. And this is a good segue to cover this. when you start with non-mission critical, non-life or death situations, right? And God forbid, it's terrible that we have to have those, right? But let's just call it what it is. If you and I start an AI company tomorrow, which we could do, okay, we can grab some commonly used algorithms, we can throw them into a box, throw a patent on them because we have a special color we apply to it, and we've got an AI company, right? We could probably raise $250,000 by the end of next week, and we're up and running. And we're going and trying to sell this, churn reduction solution to customers. And the problem is my model hasn't had time to properly learn. It's easy to say things like, well, I've gotten some old data. It's like, yeah, but we're moving at the speed of light. Like the things that are happening to companies nowadays at a macroeconomic and global perspective are insanely quick and fast. The likelihood of someone buying a solution is just as likely as a stock going up or down nowadays, right? So you really need to have that long tail ability to show, here's how our models have performed in all environments in real time with real data flowing and streaming in. Simply having the ability to say, hey, here's a historical view of how my company has done things, it's not that powerful to me.
Right.
The amount in the vast types and arrays of data that are coming from military and government applications that have allowed these guys to perfect their platform from a standpoint of how they work with data, how they join it and merge it, and then how they deploy it. That is a moat that you can't beat simply by getting some old data sets and running tests against. And there's going to be people who watch this and they say, totally wrong. I could do that. It's not that you can't do it, but it's having a live working model. And here's what we know. These agencies keep buying. They keep coming back to buy more because it's delivering real-time results. Being able to take and build a company to detect where a drone can in real time send back IoT data on geospatial positioning, coordinate tracking, and the ability to have a weapon system. You can't fake these things, right? That's real data points in real time with a lot of change. So the fact that they started in the private and in the defense sector and government sector for me is a major bonus. The fact that they've got a team of people who specialize in commercial markets is a really exciting thing for me. And I want to call something out here because I think there's a lot of other folks on YouTube and in this environment that do this. I don't look at companies by stock price. I'm a huge investment guy. I've got a background in alternative investments, capital markets, whatever. But I start with the company, right? Too many people start with like the price, the market cap, and how much it's moved in 10 days. Like I'm looking at this and I'm saying where I was 20 years ago to where I am today is astronomically, unbelievably different. But guess who was there back then? Well, Palantir was.
Right.
And some others were too, of course. And I'm bullish on a bunch of different folks too, but I'm not on everybody. And say to myself, in 10 years, are we going to have more data or less data? Of course, more. Is it going to be more disparate? Yes. Is it going to be more siloed and coming from new types of systems? Of course, it's obvious. So what I'm looking at a baseline is, does this company have the type of leadership, the vision, the interoperability, connectivity, and the ability to execute at scale that gets me excited as someone who has to, unfortunately, compete with them, frankly. And I want to know, like, what do I need to do to beat them? And I want to talk to another point here, too, that we didn't quite cover. The biggest challenge, actually, there's a couple of things, too. I'm getting going here, man.
You got it.
There's a couple of really exciting things here, too. We need systems that can be up and running quickly. This doesn't mean that they're at 100% optimization on day one, but how fast can I plug you in, turn you on, and start to build some models, start to get some variance, start to understand what kind of segmentation, classification, correlations I'm seeing. Because of their build of Apollo with Foundry, they can do these things very quickly, where the system will recognize data connections, start to make those connections, pull them together, and allow you to start to operationalize on that. I've done my homework on the architecture of how they build. So this isn't like my version of like, I read a website and then we're talking for 30 minutes about it. Like I understand their architecture at scale. It's very interesting the way they do it in terms of how they can connect so many disparate systems. And the fact, if you look at it just purely from the way they work with like DOD, CIA, et cetera, they're so high up in where they're allowed to access data at like classified cloud levels. That's really says something, because those systems need to be merged and combined with those other systems. They're doing that. So the other piece of Palantir that's got me particularly excited, I could talk about 50 different things here, but like they came out recently, a couple of weeks ago. I know a bunch of us made videos on it, on their certification program.
Yep.
I think that most people do not understand what a big deal this is because they don't work in this space. So the key here is how do you create something that's bigger than yourself? Okay. Palantir is a pretty big company. People know who they are. They know the name. They understand that you need AI and analytics, even if they don't know what it means, okay? But a certification program means that what we can start to do is build an ecosystem that goes beyond who we are, right? This means now other companies benefit from me releasing new products or from when I release new updates, right? I'm going to have a world of consultants who make their living on installing, implementing, and refining my system. What this means is those same people want to start to generate their own income and build their own SI, system integrator partners. And they now are going to start to push Palantir because they see the value it's bringing. And then they'll have their own references of successful clients when they go out and get their new clients.
Right.
There's a reason why the biggest, best companies on this planet have massive ecosystems of certified professionals for their programs. It's because that's how you scale without hiring. Speaking of hiring, we know that this big push to go into commercial is one of the most important things that Palantir can be doing right now. If you look at their careers page, it is absolutely loaded with positions. Not just like a handful of salespeople, but everything from product to finance to ops to marketing to sales to service. I mean, they're hiring in a big way in big time. And I think it's going to bring a lot of heat into the market. And I mean, I'll be honest with you, like I'm even looking at like what that certification involves and whether or not it's something I would consider taking. So those are really big things. And I think that the numbers sort of speak for themselves. I'm a numbers guy, so I tend to remember numbers. So I'll just give you a couple that like stood out to me. When I was, I know they got earnings coming up now in a couple of weeks. I was reviewing their numbers from last quarter and just sort of like the level of change that we're seeing is really important. And I think what I'm looking for is how is that trend going and how is it continuing towards this move to becoming more commercial focused? But like just the things that stood out to me, man. Q3 revenue up 36%, right? Q3 commercial revenue was 37 year over year, okay? Commercial revenue growth rate was 103% year over year. These are not like big company numbers. These are startup numbers, okay? Like 34 new customers, 46% commercial customer growth quarter over quarter, right? Commercial customers in the commercial segment grew by 135%, okay? And when we're talking about big deals, because let me tell you, man, like the institutional investors, they want to hear about the small deals, the mid-market deals. What they really care about is big deals, okay?
Yeah.
In Q3, they took down 54 deals of at least $1 million or more, right? 33 million were over 5 million, 18 were over 10 million. And you start to think about that, all of that was happening, the growth, the addition of net new customers, and they went from negative adjusted free cash flow to positive adjusted cash flow of over 119 million.
Right.
When you think about those kinds of numbers, this isn't me getting excited about a market cap or a stock price or whether I think I'm going to trade in and out of it in the next 2.5 weeks here. What I start to look at is this is a customer who has a trajectory going in the right direction, chasing new customers in a new segment that they want to own and specialize in, and their numbers are showing that they're able to turn cash flow positive with all of this. Now, I do think that there's a number of things that I would be super concerned with on the next earnings call if I heard these things happen. And I also think that there's a lot of opportunities for me as an investor and trader and how I play this in a safe way. And I'm happy to speak to both if time's allowing for it. You let me know.
Yeah. Can you speak to some of the things you're worried about coming into earnings?
Yeah. So not worried, but watching for. And then I'll be worried based on what they are. So number one, I want to understand from like a development perspective in the marketplace in and around the certification program. What's the feedback? Who's signing up for it? Is it growing? Right. And then tied to the same, I put this into a bucket of like global use, right? We've got developers, we've got certifications, and we've got Foundry focusing on the startup space. I want to know from the standpoint of those startups, are we, and they may not talk about us on the call, but like these are questions I'll typically ask them on that call. You might hear me on that call. I want to understand, are the startups expanding? What's the feedback? Are they using it? Are they not using it? What don't they like? When, as they're growing their companies, is this going to be an integral part of how they grow? So at that baseline, I want to understand growth rates for these non-direct business things, but the impact of these non-direct business things.
Right.
The other big concern I have, and this is not with Palantir, this is with all companies that I watch who are under a certain size, is we need more different clients, right?
Right.
The fact that they have a huge government spend, that's awesome. That's what's going to keep them around and keep them safe.
Yeah.
But I need to see more healthcare, more retail, more CS&G, more financial FinServe, right? I need to see more manufacturing. Like I want to see a spread out of more clients of different types where they're going to have more stories to share to gain more customers in those industries and sectors.
So you're not that scared about like 418 million in revenue versus 434. You're more concerned about the clientele base.
You know what? I think people think that they're investors and they're traders. I think there's people who think they're traders and they're actually investors. And I think this speaks to the fact that folks don't know how to properly play and hedge their positions. So fear becomes the driving factor of missing a number.
Yep.
Analysts are awesome at their jobs. Okay. Their job's to take what they know about the company, run it through a model that they have tweaked to their own fitting, and then they determine a price. And based on that price, they will say where a stock price should be after looking at the financials and what they believe the financials should come in at. Being slightly up or down or off, to me, is always a blip in the radar. If it's 2 or 3 quarters we're going in the wrong direction, yeah, now we have a trend and we got to start to worry about it. But like if this thing drops a couple of bucks because they missed a revenue number or cash flow number, everything we just talked about for 40 minutes, does any of that at all get affected by missing by $2 million on the bottom line? Of course not. Right. But the reality is we live in a world where reporting, if they could report by the day, people want companies to report by the day. And I think what we have to do is take a humongous step back and say, will the ability to analyze data at scale in real time in complex ways, but yet deliver it in a user-friendly, actionable output be needed in the next 5 years? I'm telling you, yes. I have 60 meetings a week. The answer is yes. Everyone and their mother and their brother and their uncle wants to be doing this because they know they cannot compete until they do it. There are only so many players who can do it thoroughly and in a platform approach. I want to speak to the platform piece quickly, but I want to just finish this thought.
Yep.
The other issue, of course, too, is will they be able to continue the growth rates of those commercial customers, right? So we know that the government contracts are sticking around. We know that they're getting bigger. We know there's a backlog to the contractual obligations there, so they're having to execute on those contracts. But will we keep seeing that same doubling of commercial space, right? That's the stuff that gets me excited because that market, the TAM for commercial, is massive.
Yeah.
And the more power they generate for the clients, the more those clients end up making in revenue, and that revenue comes back to them to do more work. And it's the same flywheel effect of growth. Super quick point on platform versus application. There are tons of AI applications out there today. And I think when most people think about AI, what they're confusing AI with is an application. Siri is an application.
Right.
Waze is an application, right? A churn or a sale or whatever, right? Pick your app that solves for a specific business need. That's an application. I want the platform that can give me the ability to connect and do whatever I want. I want to be able to go and look at my data and ask real questions. Which of my customers are increasing in their spend? Why? And how do I get them to increase more? How do I bucket my customers into my likely to buy product XYZ with the highest degree margin? Those are the questions I want to ask to a platform that touches on all data everywhere, that I can have control over how I want that model to be deployed and run in the back end. Excuse me. Those are the things that I'm looking for, is how is this platform growing and being embraced by the clients out there today?
And that's a little bit of the reason why it's kind of hard to sell the platform, right? Because
100%.
the client just might want the app, but you've got to sell them on this 8 million. So like, can you speak to like how you think they're going to resolve that eventually?
Absolutely. So let's speak to the biggest problem of why so many investors get this wrong. Most of the folks that I engage with and talk to about these types of investments, they cannot get their head out of the world of consumers. Like, well, I just want an answer on my phone right now. Cool. That's how a consumer buys. You don't have the skill set to build it, deploy it, and connect it to all of your data sources.
Right.
In the realm of B2B, what we need is fully interoperable systems that can connect to everything, as we said a couple times today, connect to everything, pull it together, create a standardized approach, and then deliver insights that generate more business for them. God, I'm going to go back in time here a little bit. Back in the early 2000s, when business intelligence was getting really popular, everything was all about how do I have an application to visualize sales or pipeline or customers that have churned, right? Name your metric. And then we started looking at predictive models, and these old systems for basically saying like, hey, here's a random score, 1 to 100. If the score is high, it's good. If it's low, it's bad, but there's no context to it. But that would have been enough for a business back then. A business today is facing so much competition at scale that it's not enough to know my customers who are likely to churn. What I really need, and this is the power of the platform, I need to understand the signals and the indicators that are in the data that I can then break down even further and operationalize on. So you might be able to get a list of customers who are likely to download your app, right? But I want to understand what is the makeup of those customers. And I want to go a layer deeper and start to cross-thread it with other factors so that when I put out that marketing campaign, I'm campaigning to Sean, who's 6'4", who has blue eyes, is 39 years old, and has a YouTube channel, but works full-time in AI and analytics, right? How do I find more people who look exactly like that? That's the granularity that I want to get to, that only a platform that has all of the data, all of the models, all of the metrics, all of the work and operations behind it in one place. Because then I can look at that end-to-end perspective of the platform.
So why is that such a hard sell to these companies?
Yep. So I'll give you a great reason. Commitment. Everyone wants AI, but they don't want to put the money behind doing it the right way.
Right.
And what happens is there's a lot of priorities. You're running a modern company today. You're the CRO, okay? As a CRO, you're responsible for top line, bottom line. You're responsible for net new sales, renewals, net revenue retention. You have so much on your plate that you need a sales system, you need a renewal system, you need a customer experience system, and a customer success system, say, right? Do you really want to take on a multi-year AI project connecting all of your IT resources to your sales resources to your accounting resources? Also, then your data team has to be involved. There's a lot of considerations there, and not a lot of companies really have a strategic vision for this. There's no insult to anyone there, for anyone who watches this and maybe recognizes me, but like the main problem is there's never been training for the modern executive on how to think about autonomous insights at scale. You can take an MBA class, you can do whatever you want, but no one's teaching you how to leverage artificial intelligence to drive prioritization within your business. So a lot of times the people who get it just happen to be very visionary, or what's really helpful, the companies that are out there looking for people like chief data officers or digital transformation officers. Those are the folks who have a vision for it and understand the marketplace and how they want to go to market in and around it. And the reality too is these products don't always produce results. If you start working with a company that doesn't do what they say they're going to do, can't deliver on those outputs, you spend a lot of money for something that has zero value at the end of the day. And tweaking a model that's not working right is a lot more effort than your team is going to typically be able to handle. But again, this speaks to that certification and ecosystem piece, right?
Right.
And it's also a long time sale, right? No one's going in and selling a platform in a month to an enterprise customer in the software space. You're talking months, years, sometimes multiple years to really get it right and get it sort of scaled throughout the entire enterprise. And the other piece too, just for those who are curious, it is very easy to try out a business intelligence tool. Does it show me a pretty graph when I point it at my data? Yes, cool, it works. Trying to trial or pilot or do a proof of concept in and around artificial intelligence and modeling is very tough because the model needs time to learn, to get better, to become more statistically relevant on your data in your business. So a lot of times there's also an understanding that these are not one-year projects. These might be 5-year projects that take a very long time to sort of get to the end point and really show the full results of what it is. So that's a consideration as well.
I have a question for you. If AT&T signs a full deal with Palantir, like, I don't know, $30 million deal for like 5-6 years, and the entire organization of AT&T, from Warner Media to everything they own, all their data is integrated with Palantir Foundry. Does that mean Verizon then has to go with Palantir? Like if a company in a space uses Palantir, is that good for Palantir because the competitor also has to at least take a look into why are they using Palantir and why are we not?
100%. So we have this in this business. We have our the NASCAR slide. It's that slide where it has all of your customers that are in the similar sector industry, and I'm going to show that to you because I want you to say like, "Whoa, am I really the only one not on that slide?"
Right.
And then what happens is, this is really going to the details here, but you then want to be able to start to speak on what you're doing because you're going to grow your brand as an executive now. You're not just an executive at AT&T, you're the executive who's embracing the future, AI, autonomous learning. So there's a lot of ego stroking that can happen as well to make sure that like you're supporting the vision and the go-to-market around that with strong business cases, et cetera, for these folks to buy into the platform. And my take on Palantir is they're building out the sales team because they have yet to really do that at scale in the commercial space.
Right. Right.